They laughed at her, called her useless, assigned her the most boring, thankless job on the base, guarding boxes of toilet paper and counting bullets no one would ever fire. They thought she was weak, incompetent, invisible. They had no idea. They were mocking a ghost who had already died once to save men like them. And when real danger came in the dead of night, it wasn't the decorated SEALs or the loudmouthed lieutenants who saved the base. It was the quiet woman in the supply room, the one they forgot to fear. Night fell over Naval Special Operations Base, Charlie like a heavy, suffocating blanket. The air, thick with the scent of salt and diesel fuel, carried the distant, carefree laughter of young soldiers. Their voices echoed off the concrete walls of the barracks, sharp and mocking, slicing through the quiet. "Just guard the supply room," one of them sneered, his voice dripping with condescension. "That's perfect for you." The target of their ridicule stood a few feet away, her back straight, her expression as calm and unreadable as still water. Staff Sergeant Reina Vasquez. At 5'5", with long brown hair pulled into a regulation bun so tight it seemed to defy gravity, she looked more like a librarian than a soldier. Her brown eyes, steady and observant, absorbed every sneer, every chuckle, every dismissive glance, and gave nothing back in return. At 28, her slender frame made her appear almost fragile, a stark contrast to the hulking, muscle-bound men who strutted around the base like peacocks. But those who looked closer, truly looked, might have noticed something else. A tension in her shoulders, a stillness in her stance. The way her gaze swept the room, not idly, but with the precision of a predator assessing its territory. It was the posture of someone who was always ready, always alert, even when the world around her was asleep. For 2 long years, Reina had been assigned to logistics support. To her fellow soldiers, it was career purgatory. A dead-end posting, where ambitions went to die. Her days were a monotonous cycle of inventory lists, equipment maintenance logs, and warehouse security checks. She was the keeper of MREs, the counter of ammunition, the silent sentinel of dusty shelves stacked with gear no one wanted until they desperately needed it. She was, in the eyes of the base, invisible. A ghost haunting the corridors of building 7, the sprawling supply depot that smelled of oil, rubber, and forgotten dreams. She was only noticed when something went wrong, when a shipment was delayed, when a piece of critical gear went missing. Then, and only then, did the whispers start. "Vasquez only got assigned here because she couldn't cut it anywhere else," muttered Corporal Jake Stevens one morning during formation, his voice loud enough to ensure she heard. He spat on the ground for emphasis. "Women just don't have what it takes for real military work. Supply duty? That's probably the best she can handle." Lieutenant Marcus Thompson, a man whose ego was as polished as his boots, was even more direct. "Sergeant," he'd said, his voice cold and clipped during one of his infamous motivational briefings, "your job is to count bullets and organize MREs. When the real soldiers need equipment, you provide it. That's your contribution to the mission. Don't overcomplicate it." The dismissal was absolute, complete, routine. It was the kind of treatment that would break a lesser person. But Reina, she welcomed it. She craved it. The invisibility was her armor, her sanctuary, while her colleagues saw only a quiet, uncomplaining logistics clerk. Reina saw a vantage point. From her post in the supply room, she observed everything. She knew which units were gearing up for deployment by the types of gear they requisitioned. Extra cold weather gear meant Alaska. Specialized comms equipment hinted at a covert op in the Middle East. She memorized the wear patterns on boots, the subtle tells in a soldier's voice when they were scared or exhausted. More importantly, she saw the ones who were struggling. When Private Rodriguez returned from his first deployment, his hands trembling like leaves in a storm, his eyes hollow and haunted, Reina didn't offer empty platitudes. She quietly expedited his equipment requests, ensuring his rifle was cleaned and oiled, his body armor fitted perfectly, his med kit stocked with extras. She did it without fanfare, without expectation of thanks. When Corporal Williams complained about a faulty ceramic plate in his vest, A defect the supply chain bureaucracy would take weeks to resolve. Raina didn't file a form. She took the plate to her workbench after hours and repaired it herself, using techniques she'd learned in places far darker and more dangerous than any military manual dared to describe. And when wide-eyed Marines, fresh out of boot camp and terrified of their first real mission, stumbled into her supply room looking lost, she took the time. She adjusted straps, checked radio frequencies, made sure their boots didn't pinch. Just standard procedure, she'd murmur if anyone asked, her voice as flat and unremarkable as the beige walls around her. Master Sergeant Collins, the senior logistics coordinator, a man who measured a person's worth by the neatness of their inventory reports, once observed, "She's just doing her job. Nothing special about thorough inventory management and equipment maintenance." He was wrong, so very wrong. Raina's thoroughness wasn't about procedure, it was about survival. She maintained gear to specifications that exceeded official requirements because she knew, with a bone-deep certainty, that a malfunctioning radio or a cracked plate wasn't just an inconvenience, it was a death sentence waiting to happen. She had seen it too many times. Beneath the neatly folded uniforms and personal effects in her personal footlocker, hidden under a false bottom only she knew how to access, lay a single piece of metal. A silver identification card, cold to the touch, engraved with a symbol that would make most special forces operators blanch. A stylized kraken, its tentacles coiled around a dagger. It was her past, her other life. The life of Agent 7, call sign Silent Hawk. That woman had operated in shadows, in places that didn't exist on any map, completing missions that were scrubbed from all records. She had made decisions that saved cities and ended lives, decisions that still echoed in her nightmares. She had been part of Kraken Unit, an elite, deniable asset of the U.S. government, until their last op in Kandahar went sideways in a way that required the entire unit to be disbanded. Officially, Agent 7 had been killed in action. Her death was a necessary fiction, a clean break. Private Martinez, a young soldier who had watched her from afar, later recalled a moment that haunted him. "I saw her, one sweltering afternoon, quietly share her last water bottle with a wounded soldier waiting for medevac. Nobody asked her to. Nobody would have known if she hadn't. But I saw the way she made sure he stayed hydrated, talking to him softly, keeping him calm during that hour-long wait. That's not standard supply room procedure. That's something else entirely." That something else was the ghost of Silent Hawk, stirring beneath the surface of Staff Sergeant Vasquez. The security alert came on a Thursday night, a night that had begun like any other. Quiet, routine, suffocatingly mundane. The base security logs noted a possible infiltration attempt near the perimeter of the supply depot. It was a vague report, the kind that usually turned out to be a raccoon or a faulty sensor. As the overnight logistics supervisor, the responsibility for securing Building 7 and maintaining visual surveillance until dawn fell predictably to Raina. Perfect job for Vasquez. Sergeant Davis had chuckled when posting the duty roster. "She can sit in the supply room all night and make sure nobody steals our toilet paper." The other soldiers had laughed, a chorus of derision that Raina absorbed without flinching. To them, it was babysitting duty. Hours of staring at empty corridors, listening to the hum of fluorescent lights, and filing reports that would gather dust in some forgotten filing cabinet. But Raina didn't treat it like babysitting. She treated it like a mission. She conducted a meticulous perimeter check, her movements silent and efficient, her senses dialed up to 11. She verified every lock, every alarm sensor, every camera blind spot. She positioned herself not at the main desk, but at a vantage point near a secondary entrance, where she could see 3 different approaches to the depot with a single glance. At 02:30 hours, the base was a symphony of silence, the distant thrum of generators, the occasional crackle of a radio, the sigh of the night wind. And then, she heard it. Footsteps. Not the heavy rhythmic tread of a base security patrol. These were lighter, deliberate, moving with a practiced stealth along the exterior wall of the depot. They were avoiding the gravel paths, sticking to the soft earth, timing their movements to slip between the sweeps of the security cameras. Her blood ran cold. This wasn't a raccoon. She immediately grabbed the secure line to the duty officer. "Sir, this is Sergeant Vasquez at Building 7. I have possible unauthorized personnel near the east perimeter, requesting backup for investigation." The voice on the other end was Lieutenant Johnson, a man known for his short temper and shorter attention span. He sighed, the sound crackling over the line. "Sergeant, you're probably hearing the night patrol. They're running a drill. Don't waste everyone's time with false alarms. Go back to counting your bullets." The line went dead. Reyna didn't argue. She didn't plead. She simply hung up and moved. Years of training, buried but never forgotten, kicked in. She slipped out the rear entrance, her body low and fluid, becoming one with the shadows. The night air was cool against her skin, but her focus was laser sharp, and then she saw them. Fresh boot prints in the soft soil near the loading dock. They were still sharp-edged, glistening faintly with dew, no more than 30 minutes old. Her eyes narrowed. The tread pattern was military standard, but wrong. It was the distinctive wear of someone who spent more time scrambling over rocks and through mud than marching on parade grounds. The spacing between the prints was precise, calculated. The gait of someone trained in tactical movement, in minimizing their sound signature. This wasn't random. This was reconnaissance. Someone was casing the joint, studying the security. Protocols, looking for a way in. Her mind raced. Standard procedure dictated she call the duty officer again, file a formal report. But standard procedure wouldn't stop what was coming. Silently, she pulled a small piece of chalk from her pocket, a habit from a past life, and made a series of subtle marks on the doorframe. To the untrained eye, they looked like random scratches, smudges from a clumsy worker. But to anyone with the right training, they were a blazing neon sign: threat, surveillance, danger. It was a classification system used by intelligence operatives, a silent language of warning. It was knowledge that had no business being in the head of a logistics specialist. Master Sergeant Williams, a grizzled 20-year veteran on his own security rounds, happened to pass by. His sharp eyes caught the marks. He paused, his brow furrowing as he studied them. Then he looked up, his gaze locking onto Reyna's. "Sergeant Vasquez," he called out, his voice low and serious. "Where did you learn those symbols?" Reyna's heart skipped a beat. Mistake. A tiny, almost imperceptible slip. She forced her face to remain calm. "Sir, I thought they were standard security indicators. Something I picked up in training." Williams stepped closer, his eyes boring into hers with the intensity of a man who had seen too much to be fooled. "Those symbols, Sergeant, are used by intelligence units for threat assessment. They're not taught in logistics school, not even close." Before Reyna could formulate another lie, the sound of footsteps echoed down the main corridor. But these were different, heavier, more numerous, moving with the synchronized, purposeful stride of an authorized unit, not infiltrators. Command. A tall figure emerged from the gloom near the main entrance, stepping into the harsh glare of the security. Lights. Commander James Mitchell, the senior SEAL officer on base, a man with a reputation as hard and unyielding as the steel he commanded. He was here for an unscheduled inspection of the classified equipment storage, a surprise audit designed to test the base's readiness. His eyes swept the area, landing on Reyna standing guard at the depot entrance. His expression, initially one of stern professionalism, froze. Then it shifted. Shock, disbelief, a dawning impossible recognition that turned his face ashen. He stopped dead in his tracks. The air itself seemed to thicken, to crackle with unspoken history. The distant hum of the base faded into nothingness. All eyes were on the commander, on the quiet supply sergeant, on the electric silence stretching between them. Commander Mitchell's lips moved, forming two words that hit Reyna like a physical blow, shattering the carefully constructed walls of her new identity: Silent Hawk. The name, her ghost, her past. Spoken aloud, here, now, in front of everyone. Master Sergeant Williams, standing beside her, felt the world tilt on its axis. He saw the commander's face, saw the subtle but seismic shift in Reyna's own expression, the calm clerk, vanishing, replaced by something cold, calculating, and lethally alert. This wasn't recognition between strangers. This was a collision of histories, of shared blood and shared secrets. "I saw you die in Kandahar," Mitchell whispered, the words heavy with grief and wonder. The name Silent Hawk rippled through the small gathering of night shift personnel like a shockwave. Whispers turned to gasps. Corporal Stevens, who had spent 2 years calling her useless, went pale, his mouth hanging open. "Silent Hawk? The ghost who saved Bravo team? That's impossible." Lieutenant Thompson, the man who had dismissed her so cruelly, stammered. "She was KIA. Her body was never recovered." Commander Mitchell took a step closer, his eyes never leaving Reyna's face, searching for the truth in the lines he thought he'd never see again. Kraken 7, Agent Designation, Silent Hawk, officially killed in action during Operation Blackout, Kandahar Province, Afghanistan. Reyna's cover, her sanctuary, her carefully constructed life of anonymity, was evaporating before her eyes. She could feel it slipping away, the persona of Staff Sergeant Vasquez crumbling under the weight of her past. Her body, almost of its own accord, shifted into a stance of readiness. Balanced, coiled, hands positioned near hidden weapons she always carried just in case. "Sir," she said, her voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil inside. "I think you have me confused with someone else." Mitchell's lips curled into a grim, knowing smile. "Agent 7, you saved my entire team in that clusterfuck outside Kandahar. 12 SEALs who should have died in that ambush came home because you refused to follow extraction orders." The story, long buried under layers of classified stamps and official denials, began to spill out. 3 years ago, a valley outside Kandahar, a SEAL recon team, Bravo team, trapped, outnumbered 10-1, out of ammo, with no hope of extraction. The tactical assessment, unsurvivable. And then, like a phantom, Silent Hawk had appeared, a lone Kraken operative. She had slipped through enemy lines like smoke, eliminating key targets with terrifying precision, creating a corridor of chaos through which the entire SEAL team had escaped. She had fought like a demon, moved like a shadow, and vanished without a trace once her job was done. To protect the secrecy of Kraken Unit, she had been declared dead. A ghost story to keep the real world safe. "You were supposed to stay dead," Mitchell said, his voice low. "That was the deal. Kraken disbanded. Operatives to deep cover or official graves. I kept the bargain." Reyna met his gaze, and for the first time, she let a sliver of her true self show. The steel, the authority, the weight of command. "I've been dead for 3 years, sir. You're talking to a supply room guard. That's all." It was at that precise moment, as if summoned by the invocation of her ghost, that the base alarms began to wail. Red lights strobed across the walls, painting the scene in urgent, bloody hues. The intercom system crackled to life, the base commander's voice tight with panic. "All personnel to defensive positions. We have confirmed hostile infiltration. This is not a drill." The footsteps Reyna had heard weren't just reconnaissance. They were the prelude to an assault. The enemy wasn't here to steal secrets. They were here to burn the base to the ground. In the ensuing chaos, something extraordinary happened. The invisible woman, the mocked and dismissed supply clerk, stepped forward. Her voice when she spoke was calm, crisp, and carried the absolute authority of a battlefield commander. "Sergeant Williams, secure the armory and distribute weapons. To non-combat personnel, Lieutenant Thompson, coordinate with base security, establish a perimeter defense now. Corporal Stevens, get on comms, request immediate backup from Camp Pendleton. Move." It wasn't a request, it was an order. And to the astonishment of everyone present, they obeyed, without question, without hesitation. The quiet woman who organized their MREs was suddenly orchestrating their survival. Commander Mitchell watched, transfixed, as Reyna, no, Silent Hawk, transformed. She moved with lethal grace, retrieving weapons and tactical gear from hidden compartments in the supply room no one knew existed. She assessed the situation in seconds. "They're not here for intel," she stated, her eyes scanning a tactical, map she'd pulled from a drawer. This is a direct assault. They want to destroy, not capture. What happened next was a masterclass in controlled violence. For 30 minutes, Reyna coordinated the base's defense like a symphony conductor, leading an orchestra of destruction. She provided real-time intel, pinpointed enemy positions, directed fire teams with uncanny accuracy. The infiltrators, well-trained and heavily armed, were neutralized with chilling efficiency. Friendly casualties? Minimal. The soldiers who had laughed at or watched in stunned, humbled silence as she demonstrated skills that made their most decorated veterans look like recruits. She was a force of nature, a ghost made flesh, and she was saving them all. When the last shot echoed into silence and the all clear was finally given, Reyna did something that stunned them even more. She walked back to her post in the supply room, picked up her inventory clipboard, and began checking stock levels as if she'd just returned from a coffee break, as if she hadn't just commanded a battle. Commander Mitchell approached her, awe and respect warring in his eyes. Agent 7, your country needs people like you. This was a reminder that the world is still dangerous. Reyna didn't look up from her clipboard. Sir, I died in Kandahar. What happened tonight was handled by Staff Sergeant Vasquez, logistics specialist, nothing more. But they all knew. They had seen the ghost, and they knew she was still here, walking among them, hidden in plain sight. The story of Staff Sergeant Reyna Vasquez, the ghost in the supply room, the silent guardian, the legend who chose anonymity, is now complete. But her message is just beginning. Click to share this story. Pass it on to someone who needs to. Remember that heroes don't always wear capes or medals. Sometimes they wear logistics tags and count MREs. Subscribe to never miss another tale of hidden strength, quiet courage, and the extraordinary souls walking among us in ordinary roles. Because the next guardian might be sitting right beside you. Believe in the unseen. The quiet one in the corner, the one everyone overlooks, they might be the only thing standing between you and chaos. Look deeper, listen closer, respect the silence, because within it, legends are born. This has been a Beyond Story production. Real people, real courage, not mass-produced AI. Stories that shouldn't be forgotten.